Hey everyone, welcome back to the Center Podcast. It's Emily and Dros again, and we are so excited to have you guys here this week.
Yeah. Sorry we couldn't upload properly. We had life happens.
Yeah, our upload is a little bit late this week, but that's okay. I mean, that's the flexibility of having a podcast with a great audience.
So today I wanted to ask you about beauty standards.
Dun dun dun.
Why the dun dun dun?
I don't know. I just feel like that's a loaded topic.
Is it?
It's one that I'm very excited to get into.
I feel like it's not a loaded topic for guys.
No?
Well, I guess not. I feel like we're not judged as heavily on our beauty standards.
Absolutely. I think it's not something that guys judge each other with. Like, I don't think that there's like a beauty standard in the male community as there is in the female community. But I feel like men do contribute heavily to the female beauty standards in America.
You think so?
I think so.
You sure it's not women and each other?
No. And as a matter of fact, I think it's a worldwide thing.
Really?
Yeah. I think that there's huge cultural influence on beauty standards in women.
Okay, well, I can't wait to see what insights you have on that. So the first question I wanted to ask you was, how have you seen the standards for beauty and attraction change over the years?
Well, honestly, I feel like I would say they change, of course, year to year in terms of trends, but I think they change more radically decade to decade. And I think prioritization of certain things just always is constantly ever changing. I know that, we could always look at fashion and beauty standards across history, and we're seeing how back with Marilyn Monroe, everybody knows, or maybe you don't know, but she's like notoriously known for being a size 16. So she's like a pretty big girl, and she was very curvy, and she, large chested woman, and she was the idol of beauty standards in her time, a beautiful bottle blonde with blue eyes, like the all-American girl who was very curvy and very bodacious, contrasted to the early 2000s when we had a huge anorexia crisis because runway models were stick thin. And it was like the smaller your chest was, the less curves you had, the more teeny tiny you were. If you were a size 0, that was seen as beautiful. And so I feel like we're seeing a resurgence now of like a preference in curvy women.
I think that resurgence has been here.
Yeah, for sure. At least in this decade, I would say.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like, to the point where if you don't have that naturally, what's the thing? What do you go out and do?
We go and get BBLs. And that is just a huge issue going on nowadays because BBLs are not a good idea medically. A lot of medical professionals are looking down on BBLs as a very life-threatening surgery.
I mean, it's a surgery. I feel like people don't realize that.
Mm-hmm.
People think, okay, it's just, a common procedure. It's been done thousands of times. It's the most common, cosmetic procedure.
Mm-hmm.
So you'd think, well, I mean, the risks are low since, these doctors have had a lot of practice, but going under the knife is going under the knife.
Well, not just, but that surgery in particular has such high rates of infection, such high rates of fat rejection, high rates of just like these really, there are people who have died from having BBLs before.
Spooky. What do you think that isn't talked about more?
Honestly, I feel like it's because it is disadvantageous to plastic surgeons who are getting a lot of money off of mommy makeovers, and it's just one of those things that it's in the waiver you sign. Like, anyone who goes under the knife is going under the knife voluntarily, at least in the case of plastic surgery, and they are signing away saying, I know the risks. I know that there's a risk of, infection and life-threatening complications. But frankly, I think that it's just the risk and the reward is disproportionate in the eyes of people who are seeking BBLs and in the eyes of doctors who are taking advantage of women who are seeking BBLs.
Right. Okay. So I want to challenge you on something.
Okay.
Earlier, you had just mentioned that you believe that there's a big perpetuation of beauty standards by men as compared to women? Like, who do you think has the bigger influence on that?
I think we are seeing a movement now that is atypical of what it once was. I think beauty standards for the longest time were there for the male gaze. And only now are you starting to see women comparing themselves so avidly to other women, where it's women perpetuating it. For example, like, no matter how much they protest so loudly that men despise filler and lip filler specifically, we still see girls with pillow faces. And that is because they've just stopped caring about what men like, and they're just like doing what they like or what they see other women enjoying. But like, for the longest time, even historically, even if we're looking at other cultures, other countries in the past, women were always doing things for the male gaze. Women were constantly, especially back, like, I would say 50s and prior, you were looking at women doing things for the male gaze. You were looking at women, you know, wearing outfits or doing their makeup or doing their hair in ways that were trending that men enjoyed. Because they were stay-at-home wives. And it's like there was this big societal push that you needed to please your husband.
So what you're saying is that because women were in the home, they weren't out and about, there was no need to impress anyone else but your husband. Exactly. So they were doing exactly what the husband liked.
Exactly. I would say so, at the very least. And I know that in a lot of cultures, I'll give you one example. I know that, like, a long time ago, like, we're looking like Han era, like, Chinese women did feet binding, because even though it's extremely painful and extremely harmful, women with smaller feet were seen as more desirable. Desirable by who? By men. You know, women who were extraordinarily pale. This is how we get geishas. Women who were extraordinarily pale were seen as beautiful in the eyes of who? Of men. You know, like the red eyes and the crazy eyeliner, like, this was just the standard of beauty culturally. You know, for the longest time in Indian cultures, we see women with these large, like, piercings and stuff. That was seen as beautiful by the men. We look at ancient African tribes of women who wear collars to extend the neck, is because long necks were seen as beautiful by men, because these are not communities that care much about what like, women were seeing in each other, because that just, there wasn't high volumes of any kind of, like, sapphic attraction between women in these cultures. And so they surely weren't dressing for the female gaze, you know?
Okay, I could see why. I can understand that train of thought. And it does make a lot of sense, honestly. So what do you think has changed that has caused women to essentially do all this for, I guess, the opposite of the male gaze now?
Well, I think that there's certainly a feminist view that you can take on this, where it's like, well, at this point, I'm just doing whatever it takes to prioritize myself, especially if that means screw him, you know, especially if that is counter, like, going against the man. I've seen some trends on TikTok that's like, it's done in humor and jest, but the message is still pertinent there. There's this audio, it's like an old audio of a woman describing, like, oh, if you want a man to look at you, you know, wear a skirt of this length with high heels and a button-down shirt in this way. And the women in the video are doing the exact opposite. So they'll put on, like, the baggiest pair of pants they've got with, like, a massive t-shirt on top. And it's, the message is like, I don't want to be perceived by men. I don't want to please men. My body is not here to please men. And so there's this feminist view of reclaiming beauty for the self and saying, I'm going to do whatever I think is beautiful. You know, whatever is comfortable for me. I'm not going to go out of my way to fit men's standard of beauty.
Right.
And you could look at that in the extremist view, where it's like, sure, maybe you've got some girls who are like, I don't care if my boyfriend doesn't like filler. I want filler in my upper lip, so I'm going to go get some filler. That's like a little mini rebellion against the man, in the sense that it's like, I'm going to do what I want to do. It's my face, it's my body. But then you have the extreme of girls who are like, I have stopped shaving everything. I shaved my head bald. I have no eyebrows now. I have caterpillars for eyelashes. And I wear, like, exorbitant amounts of blush just because fuck men. You know, and it's like, well, you certainly got your point across, and I think you got the desired result.
You painted such a vivid picture in my mind, because I was just thinking of all of that on one person.
I could see it all on one person, honestly. I feel like I've witnessed it all on one person.
Okay. So, do you think that the standards of beauty, as they've changed, and I feel like they're changing more and more rapidly as the decades pass, because it's like you said, in the 50s, it was a certain way. And then in the 70s is when you started to see women dress a little more provocatively. And then in the 80s was the era of disco, and the trends changed again. And then in the 80s and 90s, up until the 2000s, is when I feel like that period of very skinny, very anorexic, very petite women was very popular. And then Sir Mix-a-Lot came out, and suddenly the trend is now swinging in the opposite direction, to where now it's just like the bigger the better.
Yeah.
So how do you think that has affected you?
I mean, myself personally, you know, in a place of self-disclosure, I would call myself low end of a mid-sized girl, where I'm like averaging at a size 6, sometimes size 8, sometimes size 10. I mean, it could really vary. Sometimes it goes as far down as a size 2.
Depends on the brand.
We can go in, so we could have a whole nother conversation on how disruptive the beauty industry is in that sense. But you know, I would call myself like a lower end of the mid-sized girlies. I'm 5'6", so I'm not tall, I'm not short. I'm just kind of like right in the middle, a little bit on the taller end, I think. But I think myself personally have always been not extraordinarily curvy. I have a very narrow frame. My shoulders are as wide as my ribs, are as wide as my hips. You know, like it's just a very narrow frame. And it has been so challenging at times, where my late childhood into my full adolescence was us coming out of anorexia was beautiful, moving into we like curvy women again. And it was tough because as a kid I was always a pretty small, petite, lanky girl. And for all of like 2 seconds that was praised, and then we swung in the entire other side of the paradigm, where it was like, oh, I am no longer a standard of beauty. I am no longer desirable by men, because I am not heavy chested, and I don't have wide hips, and I don't, you know, I'm not very curvy. And it was one of those things where that creates exceedingly large amounts of body dysmorphia in a person, where you're getting all of this feedback in media that this one type of body is placed on a pedestal, and everything else is okay. Everything else is like, well, there's someone out there who'll like you for the way that you look right now.
Right.
But it is not generally regarded as the peak body, you know?
Yeah.
And that sucks. Like, nobody wants to be told that, like, oh, you're fine. You know, like, it's okay.
Because everybody wants to be exceptional.
Yeah.
So, what would you say happened when that shift started happening? I know you talked about it a little bit, but would you be able to elaborate on that? Like, at what point did you notice that the trend was swinging away from what you were?
I think myself personally, I saw it in late high school. So I was like a junior or a senior. This is like 2016, 2017, around that time. I know that there was a lot of media attention around it, because of course we grew up with Kim Kardashian being incredibly bodacious, and she was seen as like this idol of beauty. But on top of that, we were seeing people like Meghan Trainor coming in with All About That Bass. That was like a huge thing. All of a sudden people were like, oh, you know what, you're right, like we do like thicker girls, you know. And then there's that word came into play, like thick, you know, like to be a thick girl was a good thing. The thing that sucks about it is that to be genetically blessed in the sense that you can have wide hips and a big backside and a big boobs, but still have a teeny tiny waist and a small stomach with no fat on your stomach whatsoever. It's like your 2% body fat only on your stomach is insane. Like, the amount of people who are just genetically like that has to be minuscule. And anybody else who has that body type is either doing it surgically or wearing shapewear underneath their clothes, or is sacrificing every last shred of happiness for restrictive dieting and intense fitness. You know, where you're sculpting your body at this point, but it is at the cost of every slice of pizza. Mm-hmm. And it is incredibly unrealistic for the average person to sacrifice so much for that body type. You know, right. Especially because they're just going to get to a point where it's like, well, you just can't change the way your bones literally sit inside your body. You know, another self-disclosure, one of my biggest insecurities for the longest time was hip dips. And it's like, I can't help the fact that, like, my hips are literally narrow. Like, I can't force my hips to widen any further than they already are. And fat doesn't accumulate there on my body. I don't have, you know, like, my hip to thigh ratio is very small. And so there are some women I've seen who their hip dips are more severe in the sense of, like, they really dip in a lot. There are some people who have a more minor hip dip. Personally, I think I'm blessed in the sense that I think I have a more minor hip dip, if I'm being realistic. But it is there, and it is something that I see, and I wish I had these wider hips so that at least the fat would kind of, like, smooth out at the edges.
Right.
But it's one of those things where it's like, there's nothing I can do. At that point, I would need a BBL. I would need to get fat transferred from one spot of my body, injected into this part of my body, because my body doesn't naturally carry fat cells there. You know, and there's nothing I can do about that. I cannot remove ribs to make my rib cage smaller. I cannot, like, force my collarbones out any further than they naturally go. You know, at least not in any kind of realistic way that doesn't cause extraordinary amounts of harm, or that I would need to pay thousands of dollars to achieve.
Right.
You know.
It makes me wonder it doesn't make me wonder. I'm pretty sure that for those reasons that you talked about is why the body positivity movement has gained such traction, because I think we reference it all the time. You saw an advertisement on a bus that had, like, what was it, 10 different girls on it, and they were all different body types, shapes, sizes, heights, but they all were the same exact weight.
Yeah.
And that kind of just put things into perspective for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was very good messaging, because looking at someone else and then trying to compare yourself to them, like, it's going to be very difficult on you, because you think, like, well, I'm the same weight, why couldn't I just be a little taller so that it would disperse a little more evenly? Or why couldn't I be a little shorter so that I could be considered a little thicker? And I feel like that's the case for everyone. But it's just hyper, like, focused on women's bodies.
Yeah.
Because honestly, like, a guy like me, I think I'm average, right? Yeah, I'm just about average height. But I am a lot more heavy set, in the sense that, like, just heavy set. So I weigh somewhere around, like, what a person who's, like, 6'5" is supposed to weigh to be healthy. So it just kind of goes to show it's not just women. But I want to ask you, do you think that it's gone to an extreme at this point? Because you were mentioning that you can only achieve certain body standards through either extreme dieting or, you know, to be naturally gifted, like, genetically blessed. But I feel like those are the two extremes. The people who take body positivity to an extreme where it's like, I am beautiful and I am as I should be, no matter what my weight is. And there are those people who are just, starving themselves every day, trying to get that snatched waist.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that we've gone too far and the pendulum has swung way farther than we thought it would?
I honestly think that the extremes are seen more on media than they are in real life. I think if you go out to literally just like stand in the middle of your local mall, like it doesn't seem like anyone is necessarily like trying super hard to achieve these standards. And I think that this desire to reach these standards, thankfully, if you can survive it, starts to go away as you age. It's like almost like this kind of standard of beauty is limited to girls age like 21 to like 30. And then I say like you hit 30 and it's like less people care, and then you hit 35 and it's like even less people care. You hit 40 and nobody cares what you look like anymore.
Right.
And it's like it's only concentrated for this one age group.
I'd say it's even younger.
You think so?
Yeah, we you and I have a particular distaste for what is it called, preteens at Sephora.
Oh, the Sephora 12-year-olds. I can't stand them.
Yeah, because it's happening younger and younger, and obviously that's gonna happen with social media. These kids are gonna be looking at get ready with me videos, and they're gonna want to emulate that. So where do they go? They go to where adults buy their makeup.
Yeah.
So do you think that these businesses and doctors have a responsibility to deny service?
Do they have a responsibility ethically? Yes, 100%. I have no doubt about it. And honestly, it should be a criteria of people who are looking for quality plastic surgery. For a long time there, I wanted to fix a little bump on my nose. When I was in kindergarten, I broke my nose, and I have a little bump on my nose. It's pretty small. And I went a different route about fixing it. I got a little bit of filler put in the bridge of my nose. And as recent studies are showing, filler doesn't ever dissolve. It kind of just migrates. Thankfully, mine is not migrated, but it has also not dissolved. What was supposed to be like a 3-month fix has turned into like an over 5-year fix at this point. So I'm pretty happy about it. But I was considering rhinoplasty at one point there. And I had a consultation with a plastic surgeon who is notorious for turning people down. Notorious for saying, I'm not going to do that to your face. If he genuinely feels like what you are asking of him is going to be more damaging or you're going to look insane, he will tell you that. He'll offer you a more, an alternative. He'll offer you a more realistic approach. But if you turn it down, he will turn you down. Like, he is not going to be the kind of doctor to give you a ski slope nose just because you asked for it. He really cares about... the doctor I was looking at was double board certified, so he was an ENT and a plastic surgeon. And so it was really important to him to not compromise your airway, not compromise blood flow, all of these things. It's like, that's an incredible doctor. And I think everyone should be looking for doctors like that who are going to tell you you're being ridiculous in what you're asking of me.
Yeah, but unfortunately, with the way the industry works, that those clients that he rejected probably found what they wanted elsewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I think the responsibility really lies on the doctors, and including, like, I think if a potential patient comes to you requesting something astronomical, and you can tell it's causing a lot of distress, I think it's safe to assume that person may be experiencing some kind of body anxiety or body dysmorphia. And I think it's your responsibility as a doctor in the care of your patients to ask them, is this maybe something more serious? Do you need to seek a different kind of help at this point?
Like a psychiatrist.
Like a psychiatrist or a psychologist. Go seek help for your brain, because clearly your mind and your eyes are not looking at the same thing.
Do you think that that's become a very common disconnect? Because it's so prevalent.
It is incredibly prevalent.
Like, I understand social media plays a huge part into it, but why do you think that despite... Because I feel like let's say I have a daughter and she wants to get some work done, and I try I tell her that she's beautiful each and every day, and she's objectively beautiful. And I just try to reassure her on her every single insecurity. Why do you think that that's not enough sometimes? Oftentimes, actually.
I mean, ultimately, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. And insecurities in her are probably magnified times 1,000, where to you they're endearing or, unique and maybe even beautiful. I think to her it's just like, I mean, you can't call, like, filth beautiful. Like, if I look at it and I see filth, like, there's no amount of you saying it that's going to change my mind about it.
Right.
But I think there's also just this really bad habit of scrutiny. And you're always going to be your own worst critic. You're always going to be. Because nobody looks at you as much as you look at you. People take glances of you all day long. Even when you're having a conversation with someone, ideally they'd be looking you in the eye. And even if they're not, they're kind of focused on some part of your face. Like, nobody's taking in all of you in such slow and specific detail as you take in you. And especially because you're not typically, like, naked in front of people for as extended periods of time as you could be with yourself. I mean, you could come home from work, lock your door, get naked, stand in front of a mirror until you go to bed. Like, nobody's stopping you from doing that. That is possible. And that is not something that you're going to do with other people around. At the minimum, you're naked in front of yourself at least once a day when you go to take a shower. And there's a mirror in the bathroom and you're going to see yourself undress. Or you look down at yourself while you're getting dressed. You check yourself in the mirror before leaving the house to make sure you look okay. There's so many instances where you're catching your reflection. And much like an artist who just has to let a painting go or else they'll scrutinize every detail and eventually just start over. It's the same thing with our own bodies. I mean, stare at something long enough and you will find something to hate.
You think if people had that mentality and that objective rationale, that we'd be facing a lot less of this issue?
I mean, it's possible, but at the end of the day, I think that there's an intrinsic negative self-talk that happens in our society that I feel that could change things. If you were to teach people how to stop the negative self-talk and you don't even have to positive self-talk. I mean, that's great, but more importantly, realistically self-talk. And critically be like, is what I'm saying to myself even realistic, or is this all backed by feelings?
Right.
But I also think that just sometimes people need to take a break from looking at something for so long. There was a time there where our church was fasting, and they encouraged us to pick something to fast on. It didn't have to be food. It could have been anything, And I felt particularly called to fast from my reflection. And so before taking a shower, I'd put the towel over the bathroom mirror because it happens so, like, subconsciously. You're brushing your teeth and you're looking in the mirror. And in that time, you could find a million things to hate about yourself. You're putting your makeup on to go to work. And in that time, you could find a million things to hate about yourself. You could be walking past the reflection of a store, the glass on the store, and just watch yourself until you have no reflection left. And notice how, like, you only ever feel this way when you're looking at yourself. You don't feel this way when you're just driving. You're not, like, looking at your body. You're not conscious of it, And I feel like there's a lot of good that could be had in giving your brain a break from just hating yourself all the time. It's like, don't even give it the ammunition. Don't give it any fuel. Like, purge away from the mirror for a little while.
And the camera, too.
The camera, too, yeah.
So you heard that solution: destroy all your mirrors. Yeah, honestly, and I feel like that time period was very good for you, because I remember you were just, like, very happy.
Mm-hmm.
So it really does make me wonder if maybe something we could do to help not just, like, you or me, but anybody, is just, reduce the amount of mirrors, because in your life or in your room, or just have one mirror.
Yeah.
That's the only place you can ever look at yourself.
Yeah.
And it just be the bathroom.
Yeah.
Because I have a mirror as soon as you walk into my house. It's like, what is that for? What is that meant to do?
Right.
Put a painting there. Appreciate that. Scrutinize that. Oh, man.
Yeah, for the longest time, the only mirror I had in my room was like just like a small desk mirror that I could use to just do my makeup in the mornings. And that was the only. I recently got a mirror in my room, and this is the first time in years that I've had a mirror in my room, and it's angled away from my bed. It's angled away from, frankly, everything. I kind of have to like step into its view to see myself, and it is 100% something that I only use now to just check an outfit before I leave the house to make sure I don't look insane, because every other mirror in my house like is like from the waist up, so I can't see my pants or my shoes in any mirror in the house. So that's the one purpose this mirror has, is just to get a cohesive look of my whole outfit. But that came from trusting myself that I'm not going to stand in front of it and scrutinize myself. But that took work before getting there.
Yeah.
You know, like the full length mirror was something I had to earn.
Yeah. And so far, I would imagine it's done you well.
Yeah. It does what it needs to do. It like serves its purpose, and it's not a source of ire in my life, because I have actively worked in an everyday kind of sense towards bettering my relationship with my body.
That's good. I'm proud of you.
Thanks.
So, I wanted to ask you something.
Mm-hmm.
So, since women have moved away, in your words, have moved away from doing things out of trying to catch the eye of men, and instead improve for their own self-value and self-worth, we've seen this thing where they compare themselves to other women. Do you think that women who have massive platforms like the Kardashians and the Jenners have a responsibility because of the kind of influence that they wield?
I think so. I genuinely think so. Because it's one of those things where when the only thing that made you famous was sexualizing your body and, you know, talking about how beautiful you are and perpetuating this impossible standard without disclosing everything you did in order to get there. You know, we already know intrinsically that the Kardashians have a genetic disposition for their curves because they're Armenian. But we know that that's not necessarily the full story or the full picture.
I didn't know that was a trait of Armenians.
Yeah, because they're Middle Eastern, so they've got beautiful curves. But that's a huge thing, you know, is seeing that they all carry weight in a similar way genetically. And nobody pieces together the fact that Kim Kardashian has had 2 kids naturally. She's had 2 pregnancies. Pregnancy does insane things to a woman's body. You know, for so long, like I said, I'm very narrow framed. For so long, I've had women reassuring me, like, just wait till you have your first kid. Watch how your hips just widen up. That's true. That's actually true. I mean, your hips do need to open up in order to give birth, you know? And so you hear so much of that. You hear so much about how a woman's body changes during pregnancy, how much her body changes with age. My body today is it is unrecognizable to my body when I was 18. You know, at 18, I was an athlete who had very little body fat on me because of the fact that I was an athlete. I was a cheerleader and a dancer. These are 2 areas of sport that like idolize being thin. And so I was incredibly thin at 18. I remember wanting to celebrate. I took a commemoratory picture of when I finally hit 100 pounds because it was so exciting that I was finally triple digits on weight, you know. To now, like I said, averaging at a size 6. Those are incredibly different bodies if you were to stand those 2 versions of me side by side, you know. But the fact that the Kardashians have all have children, the only one who hasn't is Kendall, who is the only one of them who is thin and narrow framed because she hasn't had children yet. There's the fact that they have already disclosed that they have had work done, but all this time later, you know, you hear interviews of Kylie Jenner crying because she finally has understood, oh my God, my own daughter is going to have a standard to have to live up to. And she's devastated knowing that she has set a standard that is unachievable without surgery. You know, I remember when the internet was in an uproar because Kim Kardashian wanted to fit into Marilyn Monroe's original dress. Like, it's like a real dress that was at the Ripley's Museum. She had it taken out of the archive museum so that she could wear it on the red carpet. She was too big to fit in it. So she talked about how she went on a 6-week restrictive diet where she didn't have any carbs. Not a single wheat product crossed her lips. No sugar at all in any capacity other than the sugar of natural fruit and stuff like that.
It's probably good for her.
You know? The fact that she had the most restrictive diet. She was on like, it had to be less than 1,000 calories a day to rapidly lose weight in 6 weeks like that. You know, that's unhealthy. And it is incredibly unachievable for the average person.
I know you're trying to prove a point, but my curiosity has me. Did she fit into it?
She did. Well, barely. She like was bursting at the seams, but yeah, she fit in it.
Okay.
Yeah, it did work. But yeah, she's just and then there's the fact that she has a personal trainer and she's training 6 days a week with a professional trainer.
It's like, we're not ugly, we're just poor.
We're not ugly, we're just poor. That's really all it is. You know.
Yeah. And that's the unfortunate reality, because I've also seen the part nobody talks about is that these procedures are thousands of dollars, even just the lip filler.
Yeah.
And people are going into debt. People who don't have the money to be doing this.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So what do you think is something that you'd tell your younger self that could also be told to younger people to maybe potentially help them through this kind of crisis that they're inevitably going to face? Because I feel like it's just what's the word? You can't, like, it's just going to happen.
Mm-hmm. It's inevitable.
That's the word, inevitable. It's just inevitable. Unless you shield them from media in general,
yeah,
and teach them media literacy, it's just going to happen.
Right. Honestly, thinking back, it's so funny because there was never, I don't think there was ever a point once I hit adolescence that I ever felt good enough, you know? And I think that that's a story you hear a lot in all women. It's something we share. It's like once you hit adolescence and you start comparing yourself to everybody, it's like you're never good enough again. And it's something that I say in so many aspects of our lives, and we say it on such a frequent basis, but comparison is the thief of joy. And it's like, I look back at myself when I used to think I looked horrible, and I look back at those pictures and I'm like, you were so cute. And you have no idea how pretty you were back then. You know, like I look back at my 16-year-old self and I'm like, man, sometimes I look back at her and I'm like, I wish I was that thin again. You know, I wish I was that petite. Like, you look like a little model being so like teeny tiny like that. And then I have no doubts that I'm going to hit 30 and look at my 20-year-old self and been like, you were so pretty and you didn't know it back then, you know, and you didn't see it back then. And it's like, do your future self a favor and just love yourself now, because your body's never going to look like this again. And I just so badly wish that there would have been more women in my life saying it's normal for your body to change. Because when I tell you, I fully expected that my body would look like it did at 18 for the rest of my life if I just did the exact same thing. Mm-hmm. Not realizing that your metabolism will slow down no matter how hard you try. Not realizing that hormones will change your body no matter how hard you try. You know, not realizing that there's like this second puberty that happens, and there's no like medical thing to back that up. It's just all like anecdotal from like women, stories of women saying that like we hit 21 and it's like there's almost like this entire second puberty that happens where a lot of women are seeing acne all of a sudden that they hadn't had since they were 16. You know, like your body is physically changing so much. And it's the kind of thing where it's like, yes, can I say that like stress and getting into a relationship and eating unhealthy, did that have an impact on my weight? Absolutely it did. But there's also just this intrinsic, like, you cannot shake my belief on this, that like hormonally I changed once I started hitting my mid-20s. Mm-hmm. And that inevitably changed my body. I am curvier now than I was at 18. My body, it's so unrealistic of me to think that my body would look the same for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
You know? And I think at this point now, I look at, I wish that somebody had told my younger self, this is normal. This is good. As long as you're healthy, as long as you're in the healthy weight range, as long as your doctor is not telling you that there's this serious problem, you know, as long as you're healthy and you're moving your body and you're treating your body well, you're good. This is normal.
Mm-hmm.
Like, don't think that you've done something wrong by gaining weight, you know? I wish somebody had told me, like, you look beautiful just like this.
It's really sad that nobody did.
Yeah, because I think it's just women perpetuating the same beauty standards as before. For the longest time, there was grown women in my life, you know, telling me, you've got to lose weight. You've got to lose weight. You've always been skinny. You're not skinny now. It's like the people in my life couldn't keep up with it any more than I could.
Right.
They're like, you don't look like you did when you were 16. You must be doing something wrong.
I feel that's just from a lack of knowledge. Because you were saying you feel like that it feels like there's this second puberty, but it's already been scientifically determined. We don't stop developing it, like, physically until, like, age 25.
Mm-hmm.
And even then, your body's going to keep changing.
Yep.
But it's just going to be in the opposite. Whereas, like, you're growing up until you're 25. But then after that, it's just small increments where, you know, for men, your testosterone goes down. For women, your estrogen goes down. And that those two hormones alone affect so much in your body.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, that's becoming a realization to people now, because we're so honed in on what our capabilities, what we look like, and everything in between.
Right. Yeah, it's tough. And I mean, I think it's not great that we have a body positivity movement that has kind of turned into like a, let's just make excuses for everybody. Like I said before, as long as you're healthy, but if you're at a point where you're not, that is your responsibility to do something about it.
Yeah.
You know? Because I know for like myself personally, when I started trying to lose weight, because I wasn't happy at the weight that I was at. I was still technically healthy. I was on the upper range of what would be considered healthy. But I didn't like what I saw in the mirror. I didn't like how I felt in my clothes. And that was that one was a huge part of it, was me not feeling good inside my clothes, you know? And it became a matter of, I don't care what the number on the scale is, because, you know, I was told that muscle weighs more than fat. It's denser than fat.
Mm-hmm.
And so the number on the scale might actually be bigger than just what you started out with, but you look smaller, and it's because you're getting leaner because you have more muscle on you.
Right.
And so it was the kind of thing where it was like, I no longer care about the number on the scale. I no longer care about the number on my BMI as long as it's within the normal range, you know. I no longer care about any number that may define me unless it defines me as healthy or unhealthy, you know. And it got to a point where I was just like, I don't care. I care about how I feel in my clothing now.
Right.
If something is too tight and I don't like it and I don't want to size up, then it's my responsibility to size myself down. You know, and there's a balancing act there. Because like I said, as I started to age, as I started to grow up a little bit, my body naturally changed. I was never ever going to fit into my size 0 jeans anymore. So I threw them out, you know. And I bought, you know, size 2, and then I grew out of those, and I bought a size 4 into a size 6. I have up to, I think, a size 10 in my closet. But I said to myself, I will not buy a size 12.
Yeah, and it's, clothes is particularly interesting because I feel like because men's measurements are a little more less varied, because men do actually have less variance in terms of their physiques as compared to women. Women's clothes across different brands, like, I've seen it. Mm-hmm. It's not uniform. Mm-mm. There's no set standard. Mm-mm. Something at a pair of pants at American Eagle is going to fit you, what is it, tighter than they will, like, from Levi's?
Mm-hmm. Unless I got, like, a curve love jean or something like that. And it becomes so micro specific like that, you know, where sizing is atrocious in the female world. There was a point where you and I were looking at my closet, and I remember holding up a t-shirt to you, and it looked like an itty bitty little tight crop top. And I said to you, I was like, babe, this is a double XL. And you were like, how is that even possible? There's no way that a girl who would be a double XL would even fit into that.
Unless you go to like Asia.
And then, yeah, exactly. And then I held up a Ralph Lauren dress, and it was exactly my size. I was fitting into it perfectly. It's an extra small. And it's like the fact that a double XL and an extra small are the same exact size because they both fit me is insanity, you know? And it comes down to like, I've heard that this is actually a thing that like men are slowly starting to face, especially in the realm of like work attire versus casual attire, because now you have slim fit. Now you have athletic fit. Now you have a relaxed fit, you know, and it's like these little words. That's what we've been dealing with in the girl community for years.
And it's messing with guys, and it's like it messed with me for a little bit because I was just like, my mom had bought a pair of slim fit pants for me.
Yeah.
And I was like a 36, 32, which for the women listening, 36 is the waist and 32 is the length.
Yeah.
Because you guys only have one number.
Yeah.
Which is also insanity. I feel like that's really hard for you guys to figure out. But she had bought me she didn't realize it was a slim fit. So I tried them on and I'm like, Mom, these don't fit.
Yeah. They didn't even get past your thighs.
And she was just like, well, I'm not buying you a size higher because you need to lose the weight. And I was like, but... And I looked at it and because I hadn't taken the tags off yet because I always want to make sure that I fit into it before...
Of course.
Take the tags off. And I looked it up and it says, yeah, no, these sizes, slim fits run like 2 sizes smaller.
Smaller, yeah.
And then I showed her that and she's like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just a crazy experience to have. And it's really sad that you guys have been dealing with this for so long.
For so long. I have the cutest story of my mom for the longest time was buying designer jeans because she thought that designer jeans should be the best quality of sizing. And my mom could not be more different than me physically, in the sense that my mom is very small on top and then she gets very curvy at the bottom. She's very pear-shaped. And so my mom was always buying like size 10, 12, 14, you know, jeans. Like these are like starting to get into plus size ranges. And my mom started losing a ton of weight. I think she lost like 30 pounds or something like that. And she was fitting into like size 8 jeans for the longest time. She was like, oh my gosh, this is so exciting. And we recently went shopping and she was like, I need new jeans because, you know, I think I might have gained a little bit of the weight back. I'm back up to a size 10 and I had gotten rid of all my size 10, so I need more jeans. And she was having such a hard time because what kept on happening is she would have to find jeans that would fit her thighs. But if she had jeans that fit her thighs, they didn't fit her waist anymore. And you'd get this massive gap in the back. Mm-hmm. And I was like, Mom, you know what? You need curve love jeans. Like, you need jeans that are made for curvy women. And she was like, but I'm not curvy. Because she's thinking Kim Kardashian's curvy. I'm not curvy. I'm just pear-shaped, you know? Mm-hmm. And I was like, Mom, just trust me. Just take my word for it. So we went to American Eagle, and I got her a pair of curve love jeans. And for the first time in her life, her thighs and her waist both fit. You know, and she bought a pair of cargo pants for the first time. Sorry for the dogs, guys. We have company, apparently.
Come on, you keep talking, I'll go deal with them.
You'll go deal with them. But yeah, so I had my mom buy just cargo pants for the first time since she was in her 20s because she was able to finally find a size range that fit her. And she had no idea that these curved jeans would be the solution. I think we're dealing with the dogs. Oh, we have a guest with us. I don't think he'll be saying much of anything anymore. Gosh, that sounds like you killed the dog. He did not. He's just in our arms now.
But yeah. And it's crazy. Well, not crazy, but I feel that it's a cute story because it finally kind of helps mitigate that dissonance you have when it comes to your body, because now it's like, okay, well, now we recognize that the industry standard is like women having very thin waist and very big bottom halves. So the industry is adjusting, and it's inadvertently helping women who may, like your mom, who may not have had work done before.
Absolutely. And honestly, there's just so much advice that I can give to girls who are finding it, assigning their worth to how their clothes fit, because that was me for a really long time. I remember one other story. I'll give a quick anecdote, that I was at H&M trying to buy new jeans, and I'm at H&M. I'm at like one store. You would think that at least the store would have a size range that is across all pants. And I remember I walked away that day with 2 size 8 jeans and a size 12 from the same store, because 2 of them were denim and 1 of them was a pair of leather pants. And even with those size 12s, they're still tight on me most days. And it's like, even within the same store, the sizing can vary depending on material, depending on like whether it's a skinny jean, a jegging, a relaxed fit, a mom jean, like all of these little things could make it so different.
Right. So I'm going to take it a little more political now. So do you think that, because there is a crisis of, body dysmorphia, it hasn't gone away. It's just gone in the opposite direction. Mm-hmm. Whereas before it was anorexia, now it's obesity. Do you think that there should be mandated standard sizing across like all types of clothes?
That's tough, because on the one hand, I feel like, yeah, like that's the obvious solution. Like, let's just have like one standard that every store has to use for their sizing. But at the same time, I can understand how the material and the make of certain garments will change sizing, because anyone who's ever worn anything made out of linen knows that linen doesn't stretch. It is a 0 stretch fabric, meaning their size range is going to be, you have to shift it up. Like you're not going to be a size 2, you're going to be a size 4, because there is 0 stretch in this garment. But if you were to wear something like spandex, or if you were to wear something that's like cotton that stretches like crazy in all directions, you can shift the sizes down, where it's like more people are able to fit into a size 2 because of the fact that it stretches.
Right.
So it's tough. On the one hand, I can see why it is the way it is, but I can also see how maybe enumerating things on the basis of 0, 2, 3, 4, whatever, these single digits, is harmful. Even small, extra small, medium, like what does that even mean? I think we should adopt a more concrete, kind of like the men's sizing, where it's like 32, 36, 32. No matter where you're at, 36 inches on the waist is going to be 36 inches on the waist no matter what. 32 inches on the inseam is going to be 32 inches on the inseam no matter what the garment is made out of. And so I think if women's sizing was more like that, that's an industry standard I can get behind.
I'm gonna suggest like little charts that come with the clothing that have like the size on the bust, the size on the waist, the size on the shoulders, and then for the pants, length, width, like across different like points.
Yeah.
It's like it's 36 long, it's a 36 waist, 32 long, friggin' 20 on each leg.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of brands have sizing charts where they're like, for our brand in this one garment, you can look at the centimeters and whatnot and translate it to what their sizing is. But the thing is, like, no, like the average woman does not know these measurements.
Neither the average person, honestly.
Yeah, the average person does not. Like, at most, you know your bust size because you know your bra size. And at most, a lot of women know what their waist size is. But aside from that, like, I mean, and it's so crazy because I have garments in my closet now that are massive, falling off of me. I need a belt on the tightest setting on a normal ovulation day, and then on my period, I can't even zip them. Because a woman's body changes so much during the month, like just during any given like menstrual cycle. From the moment you are at ovulation to luteal to like actually menstruating to the week after that, your body just like swells and you bloat, and depending on what you ate, you're smaller in the morning than you are in the evening. Like all of these things go into whether or not you feel comfortable in your clothes.
Y'all have it rough.
It's rough out here.
But honestly, that's kind of why I like shopping online, as contradictory as that sounds, because most online marketplaces now have those diagrams.
Sizing charts?
Yeah, just the sizing charts. Not even just a sizing chart, but like a diagram of the actual garment you're going to wear. Whether it's a t-shirt, a pair of pants, it has like, this is for a large, this is the length, this is the width, this is the height. And you're able to just measure yourself. Like if you have a tape measure at home, you could just have those written down and pull them out whenever you're shopping online. And for the most part, it does work. It's not foolproof because of the fabric. You know, like you said, linen doesn't stretch. But honestly, just having that at a store, I feel like would do wonders for people in general.
Yeah.
And you could avoid a lot of situations where, like you did, where because you're normally on average like a size 6, you're like, okay, well, I understand why it's taking me to a size 10.
Yeah. But at this point, honestly, and I think a lot of women have arrived at this point, is just I go into a store, and if I gotta buy something, I get my size and 2 sizes bigger and 1 size smaller. So I literally walk into the fitting room with 4 pieces of the same thing because you just never know at this point. And it's like, even if I find that there's like a consistency where I'm like, oh, okay, it seems like this store is like on average like an 8, even then I will grab like 4 of each garment that I need to try on, because you just never know. There have been so many times where I walk out of a store with an extra small, a large, an 8, and a 12, and all from the same store.
Oh man, that sounds like it honestly does sound like a nightmare.
That's why I stopped assigning value to the size. Like, for the longest time, I was like, I want to be a size 2 so bad. And it's like, what does that even mean? Yeah. What does that even mean? Quantify. It's like, what do you want to look like? Like, no. At this point, I'm like, I know what I want to look like in my clothes because I know what flatters me. I want to look like my clothes flatters me. I want to look like my clothes fits me. I want to look and feel good in my clothes. And I, at this point, do not care what that size is, because that size is so arbitrary.
Yeah.
What that size is so, that number is so amorphous to meaning. It's like, I could be in a size double extra small today, and tomorrow show up at the same event in size 16 jeans. And I look the exact same. My body did not change. The garment changed.
And the best part is no one is the wiser.
Right? Because this is information that you volunteer to people. This is not information that people know. Like, you're not just walking around with a sign on your back that says, I'm a size 2. Like, this is information that you are telling people. You don't have to. Yeah. And you don't have to answer them just because they asked you.
Absolutely. Because that is private information.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great place to end it, guys. That's a really great conversation. Would you say so?
Yeah, I agree.
Awesome. Well, we'd love to hear more about your thoughts, guys. You guys can interact with us here on Spotify, YouTube. Our channels are the same name, The Center Podcast Official, and on Instagram, The Center Podcast Official. We'd love to hear your thoughts and connect with you guys. So until next week, we'll see you.
I promise we'll be on time.